Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 454. Hello, True Health Seeker, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Learn True Health podcast. We have here today with us, back on the show, Kellyanne Andrews from PlatinumEnergySystems.ca. You were on episode 292, 293, 329, and 330. This time would be your fifth episode. Welcome back to the show.
Oh, it's lovely to be here, Ashley. Thank you so much. It's such an awesome thing that you're doing for people and to give them the sense of their liberty because they can make their own choices.
Absolutely. You know, we're raised in a system where we're told how to think, where to go, and that we only have one system of medicine. And then we look around and realize, wait a second, I can think for myself. And there isn't only one system of medicine. There are many systems of medicine, and it's not all one system fits all. You don't take all the problems in your house to a plumber. Why would you take all your health problems to a doctor that's only has one set of tools? Now, MDs are fantastic they're fantastic diagnosticians. That's really where they shine, diagnosing not everything. There are certain things that haven't caught up yet in the MD-based world. But they're great diagnosticians. They're great to go to for emergency medicine. They're wonderful at stitching you back up. But when it comes to chronic illness, this is the problem, is that they don't have the tool set or the philosophy or the training to...
It's not their department.
It's not their department. And there's so many wonderful MDs out there who really want to make a difference and who do make a difference. And there's wonderful MDs who choose to become holistic doctors, and they have to get a lot of additional training. But for some people who listen to this show who are sick of being sick and tired, and they don't know why they're sick and tired, and they're really sick of being given drug after drug, or maybe they don't want to be given drugs to manage symptoms that create more problems, then we need to look at all the different possible avenues for us. And a lot of times listeners decide to take matters into their own hands and learn from, well, many episodes like today's episode, and learn from people like you. And they decide to do things like daily supportive detoxification and nutrition, just to help the body manage the daily stressors that we have right now. There's over 80,000 new man-made chemicals in our air, water, food, soil, and we just are not detoxing at a rate that we can handle to get rid of all this pollution. And then that leads to further deterioration. And Kellyanne, you specialize in supporting the body's ability to detox. We've talked about this in past interviews, and so I highly recommend listeners go and check those out. And today you're back here to continue the discussion of focusing on cellular health and resilience, especially now coming into winter. Resilience allows us to bounce back, to resist illness and bounce back from it. And that's what we definitely want to create within our health, this idea of resilience. So many of the listeners have shared that they've had amazing experiences with you, with the Platinum Energy System machine, which I have shared in the past episodes, my thrilling joy in using and experiencing the detoxification of working with your machine. And so, again, listeners, go back and listen to those past episodes because Kellyanne fills us in on that. But a lot of interesting stories have come to the surface of listeners who have used your system with their children, with their husbands, during times when they have cold or flu, during times when they're feeling really ill. And they're all noticing hugely positive benefits. I have a friend who has a developmentally delayed son who's very hard to understand in his speech. After one session, she was almost crying. She couldn't believe it. She started recording him just to prove it to herself and prove it, show it to others. After one session, which is 30 minutes, he was speaking so clearly. You could understand every single word, and he said his name and he spelled his name, and he was talking like every other child his age. And that was amazing, that when we support the body's ability to detox, it affects the brain, it affects the nervous system, it affects every organ in the body. And when, this is what we need to do, is look at how we can support the body's ability to detox and have cellular health and resilience. So thank you so much for coming back to the show to continue to share with us your information. I know you have so much you want to share today. Since we had you on the show last, how has it been working with all the Learn True Health listeners who have contacted you?
Oh, it's so lovely. I just so enjoy being, in this field, and having the insights and the understanding into, toxicology and physiology. And, just continuing the journey down the road with the people that are already using it. And I mean, daily they're calling and saying, this transformation has occurred or that transformation. And so it's just a total joy to hear the stories of recovery.
Are there any specific stories that come to mind that you'd like to share?
Well, I mean, there was one case where a little girl, she was very autistic, very internalized. If you looked at her on a spectrum of introversion versus extroversion, she'd be like way down, major introversion. She was very inside herself. She was very grumpy. She was cranky. Disposition was not pleasant at all. And she was very impatient and demanding and just irritable altogether. And so they put her in the foot spa. Her father actually is a physician himself, a psychiatrist. And anyway, so she went into the foot spa, and they said they knew something was occurring because she started to smile, and then she started laughing, and then she started communicating and holding eye contact. So all the behaviors reversed towards the scale of extroversion within that session. And at the end of the session, she was just happy, and then she went outside and she started galloping around the back garden. And the father said he had never seen her do that behavior her whole life.
Was this temporary, or did they continue to see progress with her?
They continued to see progress with her, and her communication skills became more acute. There was another grandmother who, had, I forget the age of I think she was 6 or 8. I think she was 8. And an interesting kind of story, because she was always constantly having to check in with the mother when she was trying to write anything, to find the words, to assist her in the process. But as they noticed when she progressed through the sessions, she started to be able to initiate the sentences by herself. And then the grandmother called her, an inventor, because in the end she was just happily, creating all these different stories and very finite, articulate communication skills were occurring without the mother's help anymore.
I love it. I spoke recently to one of our listeners, and she said that she's had such a great success with the PES, that she's really into holistic health, and she has a son who, I think he did participated in the Special Olympics, so he's quite athletic. And but her husband's really not into anything holistic, and they all got the flu. And then, which I notice anytime I feel like we're catching something like the cold or flu, which isn't often, but when we do, we jump in the PES and we notice it speeds it up. It speeds up our healing time. And so her husband was suffering the most out of everyone in the household, probably because he didn't take care of himself a great deal. And she exclaimed that it helped him so much to get better quicker that it started to almost make him a believer in holistic health. So she was excited that to notice that. But that's what I noticed. And our son, um, he has been doing the PES, I think, since about 3, but he would come to us in the morning if he started feeling like he had sniffles or had a cold, and he'd ask us for the foot treatment. And I thought that was really cute without us prompting him. He said, I want the foot treatment, because he really did notice he started to feel better after it. So that's fun. What talking about focusing on detox and cellular health and resilience, I'd like to get into that. How how can we support ourselves to the point where we're creating resilience?
Yeah, that is such a great question because tox toxicity and illness go hand in hand. So that's what Bruce Lipton was addressing in his book, The Biology of Belief. And so the focus needs to turn in back into the body. We're always looking outside of our body for the causative factors, but we're forgetting that it's the internal environment within the body that is such a key aspect, because that is the key to the genetic expression of, the epigenetics. And so whether health or illness is being expressed either on a physical level, emotional, or mental, the mindset and the attitude and the emotions are such a key thing as to what is actually environmentally going on inside the body. So at the core of health, there's one major aspect, and that's whether you feel safe or not.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. It's so interesting to come across this research. So it's your own thoughts and feelings that you're expressing that are communicating to the brain, and the brain's communicating to the body of whether you feel safe or not. So the brain and the body then activate a response accordingly to whether you feel safe or not. And that in turn activates your nervous system into action. Now, if you feel safe, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system. But if you don't feel safe, then you activate the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight and flight response. And so this at the core is so important, because just think about it for a second, Ashley. When you feel safe, how does that feel in your body? What does safe feel like in your body?
Calm, warm, restful, peaceful.
Exactly. So guess what you are communicating to the brain, and the brain is communicating to the nervous system. So when you feel safe, your body functions come literally back online because you are in a relaxed, at ease, mellow space. But what happens is that when the body and the brain respond to stress, that feeling of not safe, you activate something that's called the cell danger response. And so not safe again activates that fight and flight response, and the brain has sensors in it. So these sensors are monitoring the entire system the whole entire time, sort of like, the control tower at the airport. And so it's monitoring what are the oxygen and pH levels in the body. And so, of course, stress and toxicity decrease oxygen and increase acidity. So now the brain starts signaling a not safe alert, and the cell danger response turns on. Now, this system of alert was designed as a short-term response. But the trouble nowadays with COVID ongoing is it's turned into a chronic stress. And so it's become a long-term stress. And what that causes in the body is the cell danger response to be stuck on. So when that happens, then the body is being triggered by those negative emotions and negative thoughts. So when the body feels not safe, the person feels agitation, anxiety, and fear. And so what happens when the body is in that feeling of not safe, it's in the fight and flight response. So here's how the body responds. It's set up to flee. So the blood goes to the limbs. The energy is increased in the body, so the body puts out more glucose. The heart rate goes up, adrenaline comes up, blood flow increases, so it brings more oxygen and nutrients. The respiration increases, digestion and immunity go down, and susceptibility and vulnerability go up. So this is where the bad microorganisms, the pathogens, move into the body, and they become, when the stress is chronic, that's what turns into chronic infections. And so now you have a situation of inflammation, and the inflammation is caused by inflamed thoughts and feelings.
Right.
But when you, yeah, and I mean, it's just so, I mean, when you just look at it so logically, you can just see. So the key thing is that in that moment of stress, whatever that is that hits the button of react within your body, being, and nature, we've got to stay conscious in that moment, because the fight and flight response takes you to the hindbrain, and you just go into the, step on the cat's tail reaction. And you've got to catch yourself in that moment, because if you can consciously shift back to the parasympathetic nervous system, which is activated by feelings of safe, it governs your digestion, your immunity, your respiration, your heart health, your brain health, your ability to detoxify, and it also brings down inflammation. So in the moment of stress, it is just so interesting to see how you, and just look at this in your own life, how are you responding in that moment of stress? Because what is happening is you're telling yourself and your biocomputer and all of your biology that you're not safe, and so you go into that fight and flight response. But what we need to shift to is to realize the impact that our negative emotions and thoughts are having on our biochemistry. So anxiety, worry, anger, frustration, they're all causing the sympathetic nervous system to go into overdrive in the fight and flight response. And it's all activated by what you're thinking, but what it's affecting is your organs, your liver, your kidneys, your lungs, your spleen. And this all occurs when a person feels unsafe. So isn't it interesting, Ashley, how Louise Hay completely focused on this, in that if you look at her affirmations, she always brought in, I am safe. So she intuitively got it, but she didn't really sort of understand, sort of the science behind it. But, even on a mental level, it impacts the body, because the interesting thing about the body is the body only knows now. And so whether the stressor is real or imagined, so it could be a negative projection, it could be an anticipation, or it could be an actual, restriction, or even a sense of loss of freedom. All of these are stressors, and they all bring our ability to heal and repair and have the immune system active. It all decreases all of the above. And so what we have instead is a higher level of acidity and toxicity, and that also impacts the fight and flight response, impacts the body's ability to detoxify itself. It actually inhibits the body to detoxify.
So, I mean, we talk about detoxification as a concept. I think when people hear detox, they think of some major cleanse, like doing a liver detox or a liver cleanse or a colon cleanse. My neighbor, who knows I'm into holistic health, texted me the other day and said, I want to do a lung and colon cleanse. I think he even used the word detox, like he wanted to detox his lungs. And I said, listen, we need to actually sit down and talk about this. So we had a call because there's one thing to think about detox as this, if it's an annual sort of like cleaning of the house. Sometimes people do like a spring detox, like a spring cleaning where they drink a bunch of juice and do a bunch of yoga, and they just do like a week's worth or a weekend or something. Sometimes people will do a fast, right? But it's this idea that it's separate from the rest of our routine and our life, and that it's this one time a year. It's like letting the body have a vacation, and we just nurture the body in this cleanse or detox session. Um, but why is it actually important to focus on supporting the body's ability to detoxify every day and incorporating that into coming into the holidays, especially now, with the higher levels of stress and coming into a time where people might be drinking more, eating more sugar, taking less notice of what they're putting in their body. What kind of routines can people incorporate on a small scale, on a day-to-day basis that supports cellular health?
Yeah, where do we begin? So I mean, I loved what you said there, because the point is that it isn't a once a time year kind of event. It's every day. I mean, would you clean your house once a year? Would you clean your car once a year? You do clean the chimney once a year, but that's about the only thing. So, the body gets clogged up by a continuum of toxicity coming into it. And as you mentioned at the beginning, the volume of chemicals that are now on the planet that we're exposed to. And the unfortunate part is that the planet has become 100 times more toxic in just 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these women that I'm assisting, they have children within that category of the last 30 years. And so the wonderful thing about children is that they do respond quicker because they haven't been on the planet as long. But the unfortunate thing for the children is that they have been on the planet when it's been the most toxic. So there are so many different aspects that you can address. And the key, of course, is you got to get the body moving. You got to get the lymphatic system moving. And so, I mean, there's so many different ways to be able to assist that. But the most important thing is that we've always got to bring back into the formula the emotional aspect. So if you're going to go do exercise, don't do something that you absolutely hate doing, or that you're resenting that you're having to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go to the gym in the cold. Do something that makes you feel good, that you enjoy, that you love doing. And I mean, like being out in nature is the most quieting thing to the human nervous system. And just to tune in. I remember when COVID first happened, I just stood on my porch and listened to the birds. And I thought, well, the birds don't know anything about all this that's going on. And they were sounding so joyful and so chirpy because the noise of the humans had come down, so the joy of the birds had come up. And so when you can just tune your sensory perceptions into, what makes you feel alive, what makes you feel energized, what makes you feel good, what are those things, whether it's aromatherapy or yoga or, Tai Chi or Shiba Fa, or the key thing is to move the body. And when you do it in a method that's slow and purposeful with the breath, you just have so much greater impact, because the key is that when we get these toxins on board internally, toxins are inhibiting our bodies to detoxify themselves. They're actually causing what I call logjam beaver dam. So toxins are poisoning the nerves, the sensory perceptions, and inhibiting the signaling communication of the body's ability to censor what's going on in different parts. And it's affecting our circadian rhythms. And so that's where, you see people with sleep disturbances and agitation and restlessness and anxiety. But when the body has so much on board in terms of toxic content, it destabilizes the cell membranes. It poisons the tissue and the enzymes. It poisons the entire neurological system. And this is, here's an example of a woman that we met. Actually, it was the spa director at Sophia a few years ago, and we were there, and we had the equipment, and so we were giving sessions to the spa people. And so we walked in, and this woman, I have to tell you, she looked like she had, you spoke about partying, she looked like she had the world's worst hangover. She just had this hangdog look. And so I just said, trying to be polite, what happened to you? And so then she said that she had just found out that she was living in a house that was full of mold. And
Mm.
that, yeah, and she was down in your area. So, the volume of rain in the wintertime there, it's not surprising anybody in that zone hasn't got massive mold issues. So she was experiencing physically in her body that she had extreme amount of fatigue, and at that time, why she had the hangover look was because she was just completely in a brain fog. And her face was white, and her whole disposition was completely, submerged. So anyways, so what happened in the process of her detoxifying is that she released a lot of fatty content, and that was what was clogging up clogging up her lymph system. And so of course that was causing the inflammation in her body. So the sinuses started to drain. The lymph nodes behind the ears that were swollen actually shrunk during the session, which was really awesome. And at the end of it, her brain fog was completely gone. And she was so thrilled and amazed and shocked. She said, "This is the first time I've done any kind of intervention where I've had such dramatic results in the first session." But the interesting thing is that Dr. Stephen Genius is a doctor here in Edmonton, Canada. And he said, and this makes such sense when you think about it, the idea that heavy metals, chemicals are harmful to our bodies, and that they are in fact preventing our bodies from detoxifying effectively, is the key to our present and future state of health. The body forces constantly are in a fight mode to try to stay healthy. Toxic chemicals and heavy metals compromise our immune system. Our detoxification organs, liver, lungs, kidney, colon, skin, cannot function properly to remove the toxicity. And that's what you saw in the case with this woman with mold, was that Her body was already compromised, and then she got assaulted with one more thing that literally just caused the dominoes to go backwards in the wrong direction. So it's been such an interesting journey to see, and all these people coming in. You know, the trouble nowadays, as you understand, Ashley, is that 200 plus diseases and more are all increasing daily, and they're all autoimmune. So, and autoimmune diseases are diseases of contamination. So it affects the body organs, because what happens is the toxicity attaches on to protein molecules, and they're contaminated. Now they go throughout the body and they attach onto healthy tissue, and the immune system finds them and it tries to clean them out, and it goes after them. And so it's misunderstood that the body is attacking itself. What it's trying to do is just move the toxicity out. So, you know, the bottom line is that, you know, we got to clean out this toxicity. So, for example, Ashley, with your own body, what signals and symptoms cue you that it's time that you need to detox? Like, what is the feeling inside your body?
Well, when I was younger, I became very in tune with my body because I had an allergy to dairy. And so for the first 6 years of my life, I wasn't on a restricted diet. My parents didn't know any better, and I ate dairy and was feeling sick all the time. I had a sore throat. Luckily, I didn't develop ear infections, which is incredibly common for children who drink cow milk. But I did have constant sore throats, and sore throats for me was the first sign that my body was weakened. Um, and then I would just feel sort of, I have burning in the eyes, and I'd feel tired. And then we went to Dr. Diadamo in Toronto. He had a clinic in Toronto and I believe a clinic in Philadelphia. And I was 6 years old, and he said, "You need to stop eating milk, yeast, wheat, and sugar." And overnight, my mom transformed our kitchen. So I grew up from then on living on soy milk and no sugar and no like very less gluten, I suppose. We didn't know what gluten was back then, but we didn't have any wheat in the house. So what I noticed is that my resilience went through the roof because I almost never got sick. And when I did, it would always start with a sore throat. That was my body saying, "You're run down." Like, you know, if I pulled an all-nighter because I'm a kid and I don't want to go to bed and I'm at a birthday party or something or at a sleepover. But when I would run myself down, or if I snuck a bunch of candy at Halloween, my body, when it was run down, would start with a sore throat. And that was always my sort of like the body saying, okay, even if I didn't have an infection, my body would get a sore throat, telling me it's time to back up and rest and start following a better protocol. Um, and then as I got older, that wasn't my body's first response, but and since I've been pregnant, exhaustion, because of course hormones in pregnancy are kind of crazy. I've had about four hormone induced migraines, which started with the aura during my pregnancy, especially in the first and the beginning of the second trimester. The where I got the aura where, you know, I had blind spots, like I couldn't see in front of me. And I wasn't afraid because I knew what was happening. I know it's a migraine coming on that's induced by hormones. Um and so I got like the spots kind of clouding my vision. I could hardly see. And what I have done each time to prevent it from becoming a full-blown migraine, because I would never take any kind of pain medication, especially during pregnancy, right? Um, I took the magnesium cream from livingthegoodlifenaturally.com. I love their magnesium soak. and I got the magnesium cream, and many listeners have heard it if they've been listening to the show. They know how much I love that. And there's a coupon code LTH, and I use that cream, the magnesium muscle cream, and I rub it all over my neck, and I drink a plenty of water, and then I jump in the PES, and I get a session of PES, and then I lie down in a darker room, just like hang out, and each time it has stopped the migraine in its tracks.
Awesome.
So
Awesome.
I know, it's just amazing. That would have been a full day's worth of suffering. But each time, because when you get the aura, you have about 2 hours before it becomes, I mean, everyone's different, right? But for me, I have about 2 hours before it's like a full-on migraine. And so that each time I followed that procedure, and I found that it was just so remarkably quick how I could just stop the inflammation in its tracks.
Yeah, let me give you insight as to around that, because I've had a series of car accidents in my life, and my poor head has
Mm.
been crashed too many times. So, anyways, I used to get those visual, what do you call it? Like
Auras?
prism, a prism light, where it's almost like you're looking in through, the crystals that hang down from
Oh.
chandeliers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, just it completely,
Distortion.
and yeah, distortion, and just like woo, woo, like those weird mirrors in the circus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so anyways, so one time it happened to me when I was out driving, and luckily, at that time I was just coming back into the car, and so I sat down. But I had just been to the health food store, and in the front seat, I happened to have a whole bunch of biochemical tissue salts. The tissue salt line, the Schuler is the originator of it, and then Highlands is the brand. Well, anyways, I had in the car number 6, number 8, and number 10. And so I just immediately started taking them like crazy, like about every, 5 minutes. And within about 10 or 15 minutes, the whole thing completely disappeared. I had no headache, nothing. So then I began, because I always use my body as the field test. It's like, okay, body, is this what you want? And so it's always a question of experience and experiment. And so what I came to realize was those migraines, because the brain is so hyper sensitive to acidity, and so are the eyes, that it was a acidity symptom. And so you did exactly the right thing, because magnesium is an alkalizer. And then you went in the foot spa, and that detoxified you of the acid. So when you download the acid and you uptake the nutrients that alkalize you, bingo, immediately there's a shift. Now, here's an example which is really quite interesting. So there was a woman who was opening a clinic during COVID. Can you imagine? I mean, opening a clinic at any time would be unbelievably
Mm.
stressful, and just the logistics of all that entails. But she was opening it in COVID time. So she was like, I mean, if we want to talk about fight and flight, she was like at about 1,000%. Anyway, I had her test her pH before the session, and then I usually wait about 20 minutes to half an hour after the session if possible, because that gives the body that little bit of time to recalibrate, as I call it. And so, because we were doing a training, she just went ahead and did the pH before, and then she did the pH right when she came out of the system, and then I had her do it half an hour later. So what was so interesting to see was, before her session, her pH score was 6.5. After her session, her pH was 5. So people, phone me up and I said, my God, this thing's supposed to rebalance my pH. What the heck happened? But then I had her take it half an hour later, and her score was up to 7.5. So what happened there was, prior to her session, she had had a mineral drink, and it was full of alkalizing agents. So she brought her pH level up. So I called that an influencer, that she took an influencer prior to her session. So the 6.5 was her influencer score.
Mm.
But after her session, that was her native score, where her body was really at. And then having dumped the acid, and we knew she dumped the acid because her feet exfoliated like crazy. And we've tested the
Mm-hmm.
water, and we know that acid water helps, get rid of all that dead, epidermal skin. And so then we had a retest, and half an hour later, having dumped the heavy metals, having dumped the acid, now she was at 7.5.
Yeah, with when someone gets your foot spa, and I think the term foot spa really doesn't do it justice. It's six different complicated technologies in one, and you give a don't doesn't it come with pH test strips?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, we always send
So
those.
and they're great. It's my favorite brand, in fact, of the pH test strips that it comes with, and it's so much fun to test yourself before and after and see that in fact your pH does become even healthier after doing it. But you also did some interesting work with athletes, I believe, that you saw that it decreases lactic acid in the body. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, well, and the other people that have very high levels of lactic acid are people with Lyme.
Mm.
So we tested both Lyme patients and actually Olympic athletes. And these Olympic athletes, I mean, if you want to talk about a diagnostic ability, these guys in the gym and the equipment that is available to them and the fine tuning, I mean, their fine tuning is just shaving seconds off their performance. But those seconds can make a difference between being a gold and a bronze.
Mm-hmm.
And so their ability to monitor what is happening in the body is phenomenal, the equipment they have. And anyway, so what they found was they had the athlete do his training, performance. And I mean, some of these people in what they do with the athletes, I mean, I feel so sorry for athletes. They actually train them to exhaustion, so there's
Mm-hmm.
almost nothing left in them. Anyway, so then the pH got tested, and the acidity got the acidity was very high, but the lactic acid level was like skyscraper high. So then what they did was they let the body just recalibrate and readjust after that, just normal, adaptation, and to see what the level of resilience was, and then test their agility and their flexibility, and their timing, and like, I mean, it's just so amazingly how finite it is. So then what happened was, did the same thing all over again, but this time after the training event, put him in the foot spa. And at the end of the foot spa, retested the lactic acid, and it was street level again. And it's really interesting because working with people with Lyme, we've also seen this recovery aspect where I mean, I've had so many Lyme patients phone me up and say, yours is my go-to because it's the only thing that makes me feel good. But you just think about that acid in the body. I mean, if you have acid on your skin, you know exactly what that feels like. Well, can you imagine what a poor little nerve cell feels like? I mean, it's just incredibly overwhelming to the nervous system, that level of acid, and it just so undermines the whole entire performance of the body and the body's ability to to be able to operate at any kind of level. And so the number one thing that the body will do is to focus on getting that acid out of the body. And we know that from, examples of disease such as arthritis, where the body is literally cannibalizing itself in terms of its skeletal system because it can't find enough alkalizing nutrients or minerals in the body, so it will pull from whatever sources it has. because the body's number one mission is to stay at a conscious level. That's its number one function, is stay conscious. And it will sacrifice all other aspects. So when we do things like extreme sports or extreme stress or over staying up overnight, we just completely knock the body's, balance and rhythm out of orbit. And then the body has to try to recalibrate. But it's that recovery. How quickly are you recovering from these, broadsiding events, the setbacks, the stressors? And that tells you a whole lot about where your body's at. And if you're able to recover quickly, then your systems are online. But if it's taking you a long time to recover and you're what I call dragging anchor through life, then you know that your reserves are low. But the number one thing is that you've got a high level of acidity on board.
You had, so you'd brought up what I notice in my body when I'm just starting to feel run down or acidic, or, just noticing like higher toxicity. And I think that's something really important to acknowledge, that we need to become in tune with the first steps, the first signs that we're going down the wrong path. Back before I cut out a lot of unhealthy foods in my diet, I just felt bad all the time. And so that was kind of like my normal. And I didn't know, because I was habituated, right? I didn't know that was, that was my normal. And a lot of people are walking around eating foods that inflame them, living a lifestyle that inflames them. And then they have to compensate by drinking lots of caffeine in the morning, drinking alcohol at night, upregulate themselves, downregulate themselves, taking aspirin or Advil, taking in sugar just to manage, just to try to get through the day. They're using substances,
Self-medicating.
self-medicating throughout the day just to survive. And if we're unconscious about that, we're just continue to drive our health deeper and deeper into the ground. And then you take that person and you, let's say, get them off of, I'm going to say, for me, it was dairy, gluten, um, get them off of, pesticide food, GMO food. So now they're eating less processed food. So avoid flour as much as possible. So now you're eating foods that are just whole plants, right? Whole foods. I'm not saying you,
I call it food in God's format.
yeah, okay, God food, right? Like, so walking through the Garden of Eden, it's like
Exactly.
I like to call it single ingredient food. Like, there's an apple, I eat it. Like, for those who choose to eat animals, it's like they just choose something that's closest to nature as possible, not a factory farm, but something that like lived in a pasture and was very happy about its whole life eating organic, right? And living a full life that didn't involve a factory farm. And that makes a difference. You take that person off of everything that inflames them, and then a month goes by and they have a new normal. And then if you give them the old foods that inflame them, they all of a sudden feel like they have a hangover the next day. That's how I feel. I remember the first time my husband, we had cut out all alcohol because we decided to go sugar free. Not that either one of us drank excessively. We would drink socially, but we cut out all alcohol, all sugar, and we went gluten free, and we were eating 100% organic. And then I remember we went down for Thanksgiving. This was 10 years ago,
Mm.
and just coming up to 10-year anniversary, and we each had like a shot of um, Crown Royal. Crown Royal I don't know what it is about Crown Royal. I always used to love it. And both of us ended up, I think it was just one shot each, but we ended up on the way home, because it was a 3-4 hour drive home from Portland to Seattle with the traffic. We had both splitting headaches. By the time we got home, we were hung over. We had splitting headaches. And we felt as though we had partied all night long and had a hangover already. We hadn't even had the opportunity to sleep. And we thought that's so interesting that we came from such a clean diet and then went back to eating sort of just sugar dairy and whatever was served basically at Thanksgiving, and how quickly our body said, no, ow, don't
The
do
body
that.
said, "What the heck?"
What the heck? And that was us feeling the body just like revolting from feeding it poison, right? So if we eat poison all the time, we're habituated and that's sort of our new normal. But then when we take it up to the next level, now our new normal is feeling even more energy, vitality. So that once we start cleaning up our diet, we need to be in tune with what does it feel like to start to go backwards, slip backwards? What is your body's first warning system for slipping backwards? Some people, it actually starts with emotions. We cannot disconnect the emotional body from the physical body. And so when we eat certain foods, we can have an emotional response, and it's very apparent in children. You give children too much sugar, they become frustrated easily, they have temper tantrums, they cannot control their emotions very well. Well, adults do too, but we mask it a little better than them. And we sort of ignore and push aside our emotions, and we don't realize that when you eat things that are inflaming your body, it can actually come out as feeling angry, frustrated, losing your temper quicker in certain circumstances, or everyone's irritating you, so you feel normal, but everyone else is to blame, right? That's what.
Yeah, isn't it interesting how toxic thoughts create toxic substances and toxic substances create toxic thoughts?
So we have to, I think we just have to check in with ourselves and each go. Like for me, it could be fatigue, might be my first sign that my body's going in the wrong direction or becoming more acidic, becoming needing a detox, needing to come back to the foundations of health. And it could be something as simple as, was dehydration feel like in you? This morning I woke up and I felt like, you know what, I'm a little dehydrated. I'm going to really push the water even more today and get in some minerals, and I checked in with myself. But if we don't check in and go, okay, I have a little bit of tension in my shoulders, I might be wearing my stress. My mom would say, don't wear your shoulders like earrings, because
Yeah, that's a great expression.
we both.
That is classic.
Right, we both would wear our emotional stress in our physical body, and so we have to check in. Check in with yourself as you wake up in the morning. Where's the tension? Is there tension? Are you tired, or do you have mental clarity? Are you wide awake? Are you happy? Are you irritated? What's going on? Your body is telling you right now if there's something off or not. And it can be something very simple, like really getting back to a cleaner diet. It can be needing to shift your thoughts into less toxic thoughts. It could be an accumulation of many things, but it does take checking in every day and then making little adjustments every day. That makes the biggest difference. Like you've talked about, why is it so important to have these healing thoughts rather than toxic thoughts that because our body's always listening to our dialogue, to our internal dialogue. Our body creates the stress response based on what we're thinking and what we're focusing on. And so it is true that toxic thoughts create a toxicity in the body, and vice versa.
Yeah, the interesting thing is to see how broad range the signals or the symptoms of toxicity are in the body. So we already talked about fatigue and brain fog and that what I call dragging anchor, and we talked about the headaches and the migraines, but mental confusion, a drugged kind of feeling. And then, of course, the classics are puffy eyes, baggy eyes, dark circles under the eyes. But, most people will just try to minimize, that they have gas and indigestion or irritable bowels and reflux. They try to just ignore those signs. But the trouble with the body is the volume is very low at first, and it increases up to a scream when you don't attend. And so, if people have sluggish or slow elimination, then that's going to show up, as acne and skin issues. But it's so interesting, Ashley. I have people phone me up all the time and say, "How come I've never had this issue before?" and now they're 50, 40, 50, or 60. But when in the beginning, people used to phone us up when they were in their 50s, 60s, and 70s with degenerative issues. But now we have people phoning us up in their 20s, 30s, and 40s
Mm-hmm.
with what used to be considered, degenerative senior citizens diseases. But nowadays we're hearing, that even teenagers are having heart attacks. So some of the other symptoms that where you need to detox, the one classic one that people phone up all the time is about achy joints and muscles or stiffness. But even slight things like people have a low grade fever, but the feeling level, the ones where people aren't recognizing these are symptoms of needing to detox, is depression, anxiety, anger, sadness, frustration, irritability, restricted breathing, sleep issues, restlessness, and pain. A lot of people aren't associating that with the need to detox.
Mm.
And so I always say, if you have symptoms in your body, you have toxicity on board. And I was watching someone else's podcast or video the other day, and this person specializes in toxicology issues, and they were saying that 90% of illnesses out there are related to toxicology issues.
Scary.
It's pretty astounding. But when you think, if you have an environment that's highly acidic, it's full of heavy metals, it's got agriculture and industrial chemicals in it, the more toxins that are present, the more parasites love that environment.
Mm-hmm.
Parasites thrive in a toxic environment. And what does that do in the body? That decreases your circulation. It increases what I call log jam or beaver dam, where it impedes the flow of blood and lymph through the body. And basically people have clog ups, in circulation. And of course, that's exactly what edema is, but they'll have a clog up on an organ level. So the increase of toxicity in the body causes increased inflammation. But the saddest thing that I ever am exposed to is these poor children that are either ADHD or autism or, along that line, and they're experiencing brain inflammation. So what happens is that when the lymph system up to the brain gets clogged up, and that, a lot of times, one of the things that's really been endorsed these days, and I really need to bring this to people's attention, is the keto and paleo diets, where they're really emphasizing a lot of protein and a lot of fats. But what I'm witnessing in all our clients is that's what's clogging up their lymph system,
Mm-hmm.
because they've got a hyperacidic environment, and then they've got all these fats on board. The liver and the gallbladder's not responding to be able to that load of fat in the body, and it's not digesting it, and it's clogging up the system. So now up to the brain, it's congesting the circulation to the brain. Now the brain goes into an edemic kind of state. It becomes swollen, but because the brain cannot expand because of the skull, that's where you're seeing these children that are experiencing inflammation in the brain, and they're knocking their heads on the ground to try to stop the pain, to numb the pain.
Mm.
I mean, it's just so horrifying. But what they're finding now is that it's the vagus nerve that controls the parasympathetic nervous system. And the vagus nerve is what actually Dr. Klinghardt has found is that 90+% of his patients all have toxic vagus nerves.
Can you
And
explain for those who don't know, what is the vagus nerve? What's it responsible for? Why is it so important?
Yeah, it's the control tower at the airport. So the interesting thing is that what inhibits the vagus nerve, before I answer that question, what inhibits the vagus nerve is toxic thoughts, toxic substances, chemicals and heavy metals, stress and stress patterns, physical toxicity, and of course the vagus nerve is right up above the jawline, and that's where all of the dental issues are manifesting. And so of course amalgam fillings and heavy metals and all of the chemicals that they use in dentistry is is completely toxifying that. And of course then you have viruses and infections. But the vagus nerve, the bottom line of the vagus nerve, so what happens is you have, first of all, the human nervous system. You have the autonomic, it's interesting I said automatic, autonomic nervous system governing all unconscious functions, such as digestion, heart rate, respiration. So the vagus nerve is the signal highway that connects the brain to the rest of the body. It connects to the digestive organs, to the liver, the lungs, the spleen, the kidney. It's how the body monitors blood sugars, heart rate, respiration, oxygen levels. The vagus nerve is the on and off switch for the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system.
And so when you say Dr. Klinghardt, who we've had on the show, and he's actually he's the one that turned me on to the Platinum Energy System, because he has had great success for the last 40 years working with children on the spectrum and seeing that detoxing them of heavy metals and eliminating things that are causing them to have inflammation, but especially detoxifying heavy metals from their brain, that they go from, for example, being unable to speak or hitting their head, nonverbal, to being able to make eye contact, talk, emote, emotion, communicate, and in such a short period of time. And he's been doing this for 40 years. And one of the big things he uses is your system in his clinic, and he recommends his patients, especially those with Lyme disease. And although he does have a lot of autoimmune patients that are sort of mystery patients, and he's great at working with them as well. He's been doing this for over 40 years. And so I had Dr. Klinghardt on the show, but that's what made me so fascinated, was that we could speed up the detoxification of organs such as the brain to remove heavy metals, using this method. And that was quite exciting. So he says that most of his patients, though, have vagus nerve inflammation or toxicity.
Toxicity.
What does that mean, to have nerve
Well,
toxicity?
what happens is that that whole understanding is that have a clogged lymph system going up to the brain, and so then because that it causes inflammation basically all through the neck and the carotid artery and all of that area, so it gets the circulation is limited, so now the brain can't get the nutrients up into it, but even more so at night it can't get the toxicity out of it. So now everything that's up there is getting locked in and saturating into the tissues. And so heavy metals is the number one thing that they're finding that is, inside the nerves. And so what they've also found is that the heavy metals are like a doorway for how the 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 toxicity or the heavy metals are actually using the nerves as a pathway. And so when the vagus nerve gets toxic, it affects everything downstream, as I said, all those different organs. And so what they're seeing with vagus nerve toxicity is symptoms such as autoimmune, brain and memory issues, anxiety, arthritis, even anorexia and bulimia, autism, infections, parasites, fungal, viral, bacterial. And then all of a sudden, people, because it controls the blood sugars as well, people are becoming insulin resistant. And it also controls the heart health, digestive issues, and systemic inflammation. So people are experiencing things like fatigue, food sensitivity, nerve pain, fibromyalgia, heart issues, migraines, tendinitis, MS, mood disorders, on and on and on. Because you just think of all of the organs that the vagus nerve connects with. Well, if the vagus nerve is toxic, then the vagus nerve is not functioning normally, and now the sympathetic nervous system is on overdrive because of the stress levels, and people can't go into to rest and digest mode anymore. So that's where you see people who have insomnia. Well, what happens is when the brain gets too toxic, the whole entire, you know, brain area is antagonistic because of the hyperacidity, because that's not the environment it was designed to be in, slight alkalinity it was. And now, that's just driving the nerves crazy. And so it's sort of like a mouse or a gerbil on a wheel. It just won't settle down. And that's why you find people that are, cannot sleep at night, or they wake up and their brain is just like that mouse on a wheel.
And so many people have problems with anxiety, and then they will become so desperate they turn to medication, which makes the system more toxic because it stresses the liver. Anytime we take a medication, this is something really important to know, and everyone, you can Google this. This isn't like far out there. It's known. And it's actually taught to MDs, but they don't really stress it enough. Every medication, both prescribed and over the counter, depletes the body of something. Vitamin C, CoQ10, many different minerals. It takes the body effort to process. The liver has to process a chemical, a man-made chemical. Medications are artificial. Now, I'm not here saying don't ever get on medication. Medication's bad. What I am saying is that we have to be very cautious, and we have to understand that
Side
anytime we
effects.
take one, it it um it does harm the body, and we need to be aware of that. And
Well,
so,
the other thing is that it stops its signaling ability. Like, antidepressives, I mean, it just shuts down
mm,
the body feeling. And so, it's yeah, it's a tough one because, in medications, as you have pointed out, do have their place in acute care. When you're in the emergency room, you definitely want to have something that will stimulate your heart if your heart stops. But however, where we get in trouble with medications is where we take them long term, and they weren't designed for chronic care. They were only designed for acute care. And then you do start to go into, the side effects, because that's the accumulative toxicity effect in the body. And a lot of times it's a hyperacidity.
right. So here we have a person who has, let's say, toxicity of the vagus nerve, and they are starting to realize they might have that because you've mentioned that one of the known symptoms or signs that we have it is that we can't turn it off. We're constantly worried, we're constantly stressed, like we can't get out of stress mode. We can't get into
Obsessive thinking.
we can't get into feeling safe mode. We can't
Yeah,
get
that's
into healing the parasympathetic nervous system response of rest and digest. So that's definitely a sign that we've been probably unhealthy for a while or going down the wrong path for a while. but whenever it finally sinks in for someone to go, okay, now I need to make changes. Now I realize I might have, I need to go back, and I need to find a better direction. Um, how do we start to heal the vagus nerve? How do we start to detoxify that?
Yeah, what's really interesting is that for the longest time, I was just sort of fascinated to watch clients' recovery by the process of detoxification. And I just thought, wow, it's so brilliant what is occurring. But the brilliancy is the body knowing what it needs. Like if we would just trust our bodies to know, I mean, it has thousands of years of intelligence designed into it. That's what instinct means, is that there's an inner knowing, a GPS system, a true north, navigational system that has the understanding on how to rebalance itself. What we got to do is to create a healing environment, and we need to create an internal environment in which the body can then come optimally on board again, online. And so what we have found by working with clients using our system is that the key factor was, one, get that lymph system moving, because everybody who comes to us, and believe me, I have clinics sending me their most vulnerable patients, people that they can't even work with because they have been so chronically sick for so long, and they're in such a state of inflammation and congestion.
Mm.
And so I call that state cellular constipation. Yeah, and so where everybody has a clogged lymph system, no matter what their symptoms are, the severity of the symptoms equals the severity of the clog up. So, you have, it's sort of like LA freeway and traffic hour, and nothing's happening. And with the immune system, that's sort of like the UPS trucks can't leave the warehouse. They can't deliver the parcels. So when the lymph system's clogged up, it just log jams the entire body circulatory system. So number one, you've got to get that lymph system open. You've got to get the flow happening, because then all of the other drainage routes downstream will start to work. It's sort of like, as a simple visual, the liquid Drano commercial. The sink's all clogged and nothing's happening, and it sure doesn't look pleasant either. So the thing is that once that lymph system is moving, what we see categorically come out is the heavy metals. And then, everything else that shouldn't be in the human body, because the body's wisdom knows what's a nutrient and what's a toxic substance. And it is trying its hardest to get rid of that toxic substance. But when the exit routes are log jammed and beaver dammed, it tries to get it out any way possible. And of course, then that's where you see it coming out on the skin. But what we found was that most patients had a history of mold toxicity, and then, of course, parasites, bad microbes, heavy metals, and toxic chemicals. But there is a commonality also, with the dental work being done, and of course the amalgam fillings, and that's what's causing the huge problem, of course, with the vagus nerve. So you've got to open the lymph first. You've got to get that drainage happening, especially out of the brain. And then what you begin to see is that the health returns. And that way that it returns is you decrease the acidity, you increase the oxygen, which increases energy, you increase the blood flow, you increase the lymph flow. Now the body can sleep and relax because its parasympathetic nervous system's back online. And you see tension and stiffness go down. You see digestion and elimination go up. And you see calmness return to the system.
Mm. Well, don't we all want that? You made me think about, you said we have intuition, and I believe you do. I believe we do. I really feel though it's been trained, we've been trained to not listen.
No, no, wait, I need to pause there for 1 second. You have the right concept, but we need to do a slight edit in that sentence. And it's you that chose that. It's the person themselves that chose that. And what we have to do is we have to retrain the brain, because you're right, in a way. Society has trained us from school onwards to shut down the signals of the body. When you're in the middle of class, you can't get up to go, to the washroom, or it's inconvenient or whatever. So we do start to dummy down the signal. The body is brilliant at communicating, but the key is, are you listening? And then, are you responding?
So it does take really listening. I interviewed Dr. Alan Goldhammer, who co-wrote a book called The Pleasure Trap. It's a fascinating read, and I highly recommend it. He talks about how our brain developed over however long we've been here, thousands of years, that we look to seek pleasure from eating, from reproducing, and from resting. And that's how we survived as long as we've survived, is that we take the time to rest when we can. We take the time to reproduce, to procreate, to pass on our genetic code, and we eat. And the foods that give us the biggest dopamine hit are the foods that will also have the highest calorie density. And that really helped us 1,000 years ago when there wasn't any processed food. But it doesn't help us now because now it's so easy to acquire foods that are high in hyper palatable ingredients that trigger dopamine. And so I think that part of it is society has trained us to not listen to our intuition, but we're also from very young age been marketed to look at substances like food and beverages to increase dopamine, to increase pleasure. And we seek dopamine more the unhealthier we are, because we have less and less dopamine when we're sick, when we're tired, when we're toxic, when we're inflamed.
That's sort of like being wanting to be in the rocking chair and be held and just feel good. So we're
Yeah.
doing whatever we think on a self-medication level that tries to, restore that feel good aspect.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that can quickly help you, that's an easy, is just getting your oxygen levels up in the body, because of course when the oxygen levels go down, that's when you feel tense and stiff and tight, and your intercostal muscles can't expand. So the tight tissue inhibits blood flow. It inhibits the intercostal muscles to have any flexibility for better movement. And then, of course, that even affects the hips in terms of flexibility and the pelvis being able to move freely. So the more flexible you are, the more oxygen moves through your body. And it's sort of like the analogy of a fish through water. So the trouble is, too, which you pinpointed, as our lifestyle these days, where we're living sedentary lives because of our jobs. We're sitting at a computer. We're not mobile like we used to be in ancient times. And so this stiffness, as the stiffness increases, so does the poor circulation, and the body's more vulnerable to
Mm-hmm.
stress and anxiety. And so the way we think and how we feel also increases that tension or relaxation. It increases the acidity and toxicity, or decreases it by how we, physically respond. So breathing is so not only essential, you can't last long without it, but it actually will shift a degeneration cycle to a rejuvenation cycle. And chronic stress can be turned around to be, instead of chronically stressed, you can be relaxedly alert, and it will improve your digestion, your optimal health. And but the trouble is that almost everybody isn't breathing the right
Mm-hmm.
way. Now, what's really interesting, even with the yogas, the yoga and exercise groups, they are training people to stop being chest breathers, shallow breathers, just the upper respiratory, sort of your upper lung capacity. But they're using the belly, breathe in and out, so the belly should expand and the belly should contract. But in doing the investigation into, the best breathing methods was nose breathing. Now, a lot of people have congestion in the sinuses, and that makes it a little tough. But as you start to nose breathe more and more, I've found with clients that it starts to open up the upper respiratory, all of the sinuses. And so nose breathing is number one to bring up your resilience and your health creation. But so try this as a method. Do a big exhale first. But what I want you to focus on is your diaphragm, not your belly. So I want you to focus on the diaphragm going up and down like an elevator. So now do a big inhale, but do it slowly and focus on your diaphragm and really notice how that diaphragm moves down towards the belly button with inhale. Now you think it's almost the opposite. But so now when you do a big inhale, bring the diaphragm down, and then once it's down, then continue that inhale, and you have to train yourself to be able to do it. So this is can be a little frustrating at first because we're not used to doing it this way. But then what you want to do is you want to take the air down to the lower part of the lung so that you actually expand the intercostal muscles to expand out, because that is what creates more capacity and more volume.
Mm-hmm.
So what's very interesting, tying this back into the nervous system, is that the vagus nerve is connected to the diaphragm. So when you do diaphragmatic breathing, so literally it massages your organs, but it signals your body that you're safe. So one of the things that you can do in that moment of stress, whatever the stressor is, you catch yourself completely tensing up, as you said, your mother-in-law saying about the shoulders up as earrings. So catch yourself in that moment of stress. Now, in your body somewhere is a center that signals you when you're uptight. So a lot of people, it's the gut. So as soon as they get tight, as soon as they have the stress moment, they get tight. Usually people stop breathing or hardly breathe at all. But there's a place in your body and you just need to find it. And how you find it is it gets triggered by stress. So find that part in your body that is your signal of stress. And what you do is you breathe right into that. So, but when you do that diaphragmatic breathing, you literally are choosing in that moment a new choice, and the choice is to stay in the parasympathetic nervous system, not move into fight and flight, and just to stay in mellow mode. And when you stay in mellow mode, you can make brilliant decisions. You see that you have options. You look at your life more from an eagle point of view rather than an ant point of view. To an eagle, it looks down and everything is very small. All the issues in life are just put in perspective. It's a very broad angle, wide angle camera kind of view of life. But when you're an ant, everything looks like skyscrapers. And that's when you're in the sympathetic nervous system mode, where everything you globalize, that everything in your life is not working, where it's one aspect that's not working, and then you just need to shift back to your forebrain, which is the mammalian side of the creativity of thinking, the front part of the brain. So one of the things you can do, one is diaphragm breathing. Two is to bring your awareness to your forebrain, which is your thinking center. The back part of the brain is the reactive, animalistic, fight or flight part. So bring yourself to the front part of the brain. Now you can do that by actually tapping on the brain, or just visually push on the brain, because wherever the pressure is, wherever the pressure is, the attention goes. So by pushing on the forebrain, you literally cause your awareness to come to the frontal lobes. But the other thing you can do is just now, in this moment, look out through your eyes very consciously. And if you're in a room or outside or whatever, look to see colors and textures, as if you're an artist and you're going to draw this landscape or whatever. So just really focus on the difference between colors and textures. By coming to the forebrain through your eyes, you're actually bringing the energy of the brain to the front of the brain, and that will bring you into your thinking centers. Then you start to focus on solution orientation. But if you're in the hindbrain in fight and flight, you're totally in that reactive mode. There isn't any sense of options. There's just a feeling of entrapment.
Well, I think we've really illustrated the point of how physical health, diet, and our lifestyle and our emotions are all connected and they all affect each other. And
Yeah, it's interesting, on that level, just one more thing, which I think is really
mhm,
important because it ties into both the physical and the emotional, is at what frequency is your body operating at? And that is hugely impacted by your emotions and your thoughts. So when you have a setback, you want to see how quickly your resilience level is in rebounding out of that situation. Or is it a short-term thing, or are you carrying it forward? Do you continue to go over whatever derailment happened, or do you move on? But what's interesting, Ashley, is the frequency aspect of the human body. Now, at healthy is about 58, but when you have a cold or the flu, the above 58 is when you're healthy. But when you have the cold or the flu, your frequency drops down to 57. When you have candida, it drops. Candida overgrowth, it drops to 55. When 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 you're receptive to Epstein-Barr, it drops down to 52. And when you have cancer, it's 42, and death begins at 25.
mhm.
So it's so important to keep your frequency at a high level, because that will affect everything in your body, because your body's designed to operate at that set level. And I mean, it's all of life is disturbing. It's sort of like, a lake that's beautifully serene and calm, and then all of a sudden these storms come along. But it's like, what's your ability to recover from the storm?
Mhm. How quickly can you bounce back? How soon do you detect that there's something off, and how quickly will you bounce back?
Yeah, and one of the keys is your energy level, and that's why I wanted to bring in frequency, because there's a huge correlation between your energy level and your toxicity level and the impact that it has on the mitochondria inside the cells, because the mitochondria are your power creators. They're their energized bunny, creators. So when the cells are toxic, they're inhibited in being able to create energy. And we need to make our mitochondria really happy. And what makes them happy is breathing, water, and nutrients. So the key to cellular health is creating that energy. And the biggest thing, the greatest thing that I'm so happy to share is that thiamine, B1, is the fuel source for the mitochondria.
Hmm.
It's so amazing because, if you feed the mitochondria what they need, then their ability to do their job is just heightened. But when the mitochondria aren't functioning, the nerves aren't able to fire properly. The acidosis in the body starts to cause edema and inflammation. The glucose utilization goes down, the blood flow goes down, the health in the gut goes down, the whole ability of the autonomic nervous system, its ability to function and signal goes down. And so it all depends on the mitochondria, and it's the mitochondria are key, of course, to being able to help the body to detoxify.
I just did an interview with the scientist behind Viome, the at-home testing company
Yes.
that helps with understanding what chemicals your bacteria make from the food you eat. Because there's hundreds of thousands of pathways of that genetic expressions of your bacteria. Mitochondria are bacteria in our cells, and they have a unique relationship with the bacteria in our gut. They're actually finding that our gut will send signals to our mitochondria throughout our body, and that we want obviously establish a very healthy microbiome can also help the mitochondria. But we're just scratching the surface in terms of understanding the importance of the bacteria in our body, and eating foods that contain like highly processed foods, sugar, alcohol, oil has even been known to harm the good bacteria in our body, while inviting and creating that environment, the petri dish, that allows the unhealthy not only bacteria but yeast and parasites to thrive. And it isn't until if people who are not really listening to the body, it isn't until they're really sick that they're noticing a difference. But those of us who really listen, who really focus in on and listen to our body, will start to feel off fairly soon into going down the wrong path. Um, that's why I like doing a symptom inventory checklist. I write down symptoms, and I get all my clients to do this as well. Write down all your symptoms, no matter how big or how small, even the ones your doctor says, oh, you have that because it's genetic, or you have that because of your age, or you have that because you're a woman, or because you have a uterus, whatever it is, or because of your work, whatever it is. Write down every symptom you have and then make 3 columns: frequency, duration, and intensity. So, how often does it happen is the frequency, duration, how long does it last, and intensity on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is it? And either it's, every how many times a day, how many times a week, how many times a month. And then you come back to that list a month from now. And you could also even notice, like, on times of during the full moon and during a new moon, do your symptoms get worse? Is your sleep disrupted during a full moon or new moon? Do you find yourself craving things, more tired? Those are absolute signs that you have an imbalance in the gut, whether it be parasite or candida or otherwise. So we have to listen to the symptoms of the body. And then if your symptoms are getting worse and not better, well, we really need to pump the brakes and go in a different direction, figure out what's going on. And if you're staying the same, okay, well, that's good, but let's see what we can do to improve, and maybe pick one and look at what you can do to improve it. And then if you're getting better each month, keep at it. It's a fantastic way to just check in, because we often forget. I had a client once who we made some changes to her diet and she started taking supplements, and 6 months later she said, I forgot I used to have migraines. like
Mhm.
weekly migraines, and she hadn't had a migraine in 6 months.
It was a joy that she forgot.
Yeah, but she was like, I can't believe it. I actually forgot. Like I had to remind her.
I know I see that all the time. It's so fun. People come in with, all these derailments, and that's why I have them, from a nursing background, I have them monitor their own health and,
Hmm.
and chart their progress. And that's why, doing the pH for 3 days is so awesome, because it's not just one moment in time. Because as we saw with the woman who had it at 6.5, it's what she did right before that made that difference. But when you track it for 3 days, doing it 3 times a day, both urine and saliva, you get a whole different picture.
And listeners can go back and hear our episode all about pH that we did.
That was 293.
Yes, yeah, that was episode 293. Um, you've shared stories in the past, but after sharing this information with us, do you have any more stories of client recoveries returning to health after changing these factors in their life?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I could go on for days,
Please
but
do.
yeah, well, it's just, so amazing. Like we had one girl who came to us, and she actually had Down syndrome, and her own mom described her as a zombie, which I mean is just really sad. But anyway, so she had a series of sessions, and huge lymph clog up, and then massive download of other content, including heavy metals. But it was like she popped out of the cocoon, and she just became, I mean, she was like so incredibly internalized, and then she became, literally like a butterfly, just, so outgoing and gregarious. And, when the Downs people smile, it's like their whole body lights up. Well, what happened was she initially had sessions at a clinic, and then the mother purchased. And so it was a month before we were able to actually do them in her home environment. And in that month's period of time, she clogged all up again. So by the time she got back home, she was back in the cocoon again. And so I assisted her in the first session over the phone. And it was so amazing, because the mom said during the session, she said, "Oh, I think she's feeling better because she's smiling big time." And so then after the session, Mom and I were doing cleanup and tidy up and all of the procedural stuff. So then I said, we'll have her go and, just go check in with her body and see how she feels. Well, she came back into the room, and she was clapping and dancing and singing around the room, and I could hear her. And I think that that's just such a perfect illustration and image and visualization for all of us in whatever life experiences we're having, especially in this COVID time where, you just feel like you're in a box and there's no doors. Can you imagine what this poor girl felt inside her body, not being able to communicate? And we've actually had, autistic children have a series of sessions, like a teenager. I remember one time, and after she cleared enough of this toxic content out of her body, being in the brain, she was able to communicate what her experience was. And one of the things was that she would never let anybody touch her, and that she had to dress herself. Well, that sort of drove the family crazy because she was so slow in the process. But later she told the reason that was because her skin was burning, and if anybody touched her, it was just super, super painful.
Mm. Do you have any stories that you can share of sort of long term um, working with your system for a while, and what kind of results people get after long term use?
Well, I mean, whatever they experience in the short term just becomes, more pronounced over time. Like we've had people who have been with us since 2004, and it's been kind of a fun journey because, I had this one man. I think he came to us when he was in his 60s, and he was in quite a state. He had heavy metal toxicity, really extremely. And he had to literally go out and stand in the snow to calm down the burning of his feet.
Mm.
And after a series of sessions, he no longer needed that. And now he's in his 80s and he phones me up. And I mean, he's just chirping away like a robin in springtime. And he's just so outgoing and energetic and gregarious and, you know, just a happy camper. And so he says to me, he says, you know, when I came to you in my 60s, he said, I just, I was really going downhill rapidly and I just didn't even want to be here. But now, he said, I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. He said, you know, all those people that have to have a cup of coffee? Not me. He said, I get up and I'm just ready to go.
I love it.
Yeah, and so it's really fun. But, you know, one of the cases that happened recently that really astounded me because, you know, I've seen a lot of, you know, people coming out of themselves, so to speak, when they're introverted and going extroverted. But this man was really unusual. He grew up in a toxic, sort of like a Aaron Brockovich story. He grew up in one of the most toxic cities in New Jersey. They actually told me what it was, but I can't remember what it was now. It's probably better I don't tell anyways. But anyway, so he ended up with cancer and went the traditional route, in which then they did chemotherapy and radiation and CAT scans and dyes and meds and, you know, the whole pathway. And so anyways, by the time I got to be with him, it was actually his wife who was my client, but she actually had crashed her own body because she was caretaking him, and that's sometimes what we see is the caretakers end up going first because they're so exhausted. But in this case, she asked me to look after him while she used the system to balance her issues out. So anyways, so I did the first session with both of them. And I mean, when the guy came on the phone, I was just shocked. He spoke a few words, and then there'd be this huge pause, and then a few more words, and a huge pause. So I was like, you know, moving at about a fifth gear at the time, so I slowed it down to first, and just sort of connected, you know, in the space and time and place that he was in, and then just, you know, kept him going through the session and checking in. Well, by the end of the session, like he was talking like he was, you know, the old record players when you played it at 33 and it went to a very slurry kind of level. And that's how he was talking. But by the end of that session, he was talking like you and I, normally at a 45-degree speed. And so then I had him get out. Now, this man was a lawyer. So you can imagine how much he would value his ability to communicate and his articulation. So he gets out of the foot spa, and I knew that he had had a shift because of the tone, the voice, the clarity, and the speed. And I'd never really experienced that so dramatically on an auditory level. So we got him out of the system, and I said, you know, so because of his mental orientation, I said, so how are you feeling? And I said, you know, do you feel a little more alert and awake? And he said, yes. And I mean, it was like a disc jockey kind of tone and volume that came out of it. It was so awesome. And then what happened was he said, and something else. And I said, what? What are you experiencing? And he said, everything in the room is brighter. So I had him tune into his eyes. I said, okay, well, let's look through your eyes and tell me what you're experiencing. So he looked outside and he said, oh my God, he said, everything has come back into focus again. And so I was just astounded. But you know what? When you think about it, you know, in Chinese medicine, of course, it's the liver and the eyes. But the nervous system in the eyes, the nerves in the eyes are the most vulnerable to high levels of acidity. And of course, he was loaded with heavy metals. I mean, he had a huge pH shift in his session. and his skin exfoliated like crazy, and so we knew that he had downloaded a lot of acid, and so but instantaneously the body responded to that, and that's what's so great. I mean, here's a guy that's in a chronic, debilitated for years kind of situation, able to do a reset. And of course, that's, the immediate thing, but then the clogged up comes up. So it's sort of like onion layers. And so then you just have to continue to unlayer as the body starts to, allow that toxicity to come out. But it's just so astounding at how significantly toxicity affects human physiology and especially the nervous system.
Hmm. I love it. Well, these are the kind of experiences I've had with the PES. I have a family member who was back in July on many medications, using a walker, barely able to walk, and then started using it diligently 3 times a week. And about a month or a month and a half into using it diligently, his his he had a physical therapist coming to the house to offer in-home care, and he took his blood pressure and said, "You have to go to your doctor right away. I'm very concerned. Your blood pressure is dangerously low." And so he took him. They actually went that day to the doctor, and I mean, I was so happy that they got such quick care, given that with COVID, it's been difficult at times. And the doctor that day took him off of some medications and decreased the dosage of other medications. So he eliminated some medications, and so it's been several months. He's been using it diligently 3 times a week, and he will sometimes, he hasn't changed his diet. He's stubborn like that. Isn't taking supplements. There's only so much you can do. But what I did see is that he's gone from barely able to walk with a walker to now he no longer uses the walker. And there'll be times when he kind of crawls in and gets in the machine, and then 30 minutes later he's got a bounce in his step. He has color. Oh my gosh, he looked gray and white. He looked like a ghost. We really didn't think he'd live very long. And now he has color again. So it's really, really interesting to see um, when people use it for several months straight, like diligently, how much they're getting out of it. Now imagine if he then shifted his diet to be even healthier and shifted,
Yeah, the
other things.
domino effect. Domino
Right,
effect.
right. And I'm hoping, he also would benefit from shifting his thinking into
Yeah, the
healthier
emotional game.
thoughts, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I've
But as they
had,
start to feel better, that's what's really awesome. I mean, I had
yes.
a woman who came to us in the beginning and she had a fatty liver enzymes
Mm,
were off the chart, her blood sugar so bad they wanted to put her on insulin. But you know what? It was her attitude that was like, I always jokingly say with my husband, boy, you can feel that person's attitude 20 feet away. So her attitude was just completely negative. It was like focused on everything in the world was wrong, and what everybody else did was wrong. But you know what? In the process of her using it for 6 months, she went back and got retested, no longer had a fatty liver enzymes normalized, her blood sugars normalized. She lost 60 pounds of weight because she didn't need the storage closets for the toxicity anymore. But it was the attitude change that was so awesome. She started going to a new sewing group. She became much more involved with their church. She became more social in the community, involved in causes. And now everything in the world was right.
beautiful. I love it. Well, it's definitely, I'm a big fan of the PES. I've had great experiences in our Facebook group. We have several listeners raving about the results they get with themselves and with their family. So I highly recommend using it, getting the system, using it for yourself. And listeners can contact you, so you don't put much information on the website. You're very hands-on. And so listeners can go to platinumenergysystem.ca, and talk to you, give you a call and actually talk to you. And the feedback we get, the listeners have given, is that you are so giving of your time and so generous, and you really, really care and really help people. And everyone has had a very positive experience with you, working with you. And you will help them. If someone's not sure they want to buy one because they want to try it out, you will help them find a practitioner in their area that has one so they can go and get a session. Um, I know Dr. Klinghardt charges something like $80 a session, whereas if you own it yourself, it would be like $12.50 a session. Like you're obviously saving money if in the long run if you have one yourself, but if you just want to try it out, I would definitely go find a practitioner if you can and get a few sessions and try it out
Yeah,
for
right now
yourself.
that's kind of interesting. Did you know that California just went into lockdown?
Oh,
And they
yeah.
actually even have a curfew now.
Oh my
So the
gosh.
ability to go to practitioners right now is limited, but also because our presence, we're in Canada, and so, we don't have a huge population of practitioners in the U.S.
Well, I suppose it would just depend on what area they are
They're in,
in.
yeah,
It's worth asking, right? It is
yeah,
worth asking. If you have the means, get one. You do give a really beautiful discount to listeners, and you're so giving of your time. Um, I've been very impressed. I've been very impressed with your system and your services, and I know it's helped me a great deal. I had my liver was inflamed, and I've shared this before, but I was struggling with the ability to detox heavy metals. Listen to my interview with Ben Lynch. He's a naturopath, actually local to me. We have not yet crossed paths in person, but I have interviewed him. His book is called Dirty Genes. It's a great book. You can also listen to the episode to get really a really good glimpse into the book. He talks about different things in our daily life that shut down our or epigenetically shift our gene expressions to shut down our ability to detoxify. One of which, I mean, these are simple changes you can make in your life. If you cook with a gas stove, there's formaldehyde in gas, and if you don't always have the hood on or the range or
and
the fan to suck it all out, right? Then or if you have your oven on, your gas oven, and you don't have the vent on, we are inhaling, we're increasing the pollution in our house. And considering many people around the world are now stuck at home almost all the time, and they're increasing their air pollution, which it's known that our internal air pollution of our house can be 10 times more toxic than it being downtown outside.
you're in it all the
You're in it
time,
all the
especially
time.
these days.
Right. And so little things, like there's little changes you can make to help your body detoxify. And this is what I was looking for because my liver was really inflamed. I was waking up tasting heavy metals in my mouth. My body was creating a stench of burning rubber. It was very interesting.
Wow.
And so I kept struggling, and also my because my liver couldn't handle it. Every time I went to lose weight, because every time I made a health change, like got eating even healthier, my body would shed more weight, and then my liver would become even more inflamed because it couldn't handle the toxins that were stored in the fat, because our body stores heavy metals in our fat tissue as a way to get it away from the organs if the liver
Yes.
can't process it. So here I had for years this difficulty with a hugely inflamed liver. Not I did not have fatty liver or cirrhosis liver. I'm thankful. My liver was distended. You could actually see it pushing outside of my rib cage, under the rib
Um,
cage, and in ultrasound, she said it was just a very upset, angry liver, very inflamed. So I was having problems. Like my liver could not detoxify, perhaps because I have MTHFR, the gene expression that doesn't allow me to methylate B vitamins. Perhaps I was really focusing on getting all the nutrients that my body needed at the correct levels. But it could be, maybe there's something inflamed in my diet, but really it was my body having such a hard time with detoxifying. And my naturopath said, why don't you try finding ways to bypass the liver, sweating in a sauna, and a foot spa. There's so many knockoffs out there. There's so many bad saunas out there. There's so many knockoffs of this technology that you sell, and I knew that, and so I
I
spent.
call them the wannabes.
Right. Well, you could go on eBay and buy something for $200 that claims it's what you do, but it's not. It's a knockoff from China, and
I wouldn't
not.
be putting my feet in that water knowing what I
No.
know.
No, absolutely not. It's quite scary, and I like that how you've actually tested the water, putting the array in the water and testing the water with the machine running with no feet in it. And you share that information. You show like it's not you're not actually creating more toxins by putting your feet in this water. And then you have results where you've shown what comes out of people, and you have that water tested and sent to a lab and tested. So I spent a long time looking for the real McCoy, right? The right sauna that actually gets results at eliminating heavy metals, and also with your technology as well. And I speak more about how I found you back in podcast episode 292, which is a great one to go back and check out to learn more about the technology of how this works. But using your system and using the sauna, I have had such amazing results. And of course, adjusting diet to have, more greens and more herbs that help the body get out heavy metals. My liver went back to normal. I no longer
Awesome.
taste heavy metals. I no longer have a problem with detoxifying. Like my liver is happy, and actually all my lab work, and I'm so proud of it. All the last time I got all my lab work, which was 20, no, just about, let's see, I'm 20 weeks pregnant, and I got it when I was about 9 weeks pregnant. Okay, so about 11 weeks ago, I got all my lab work, and it was the best lab work I've ever had. And it just keeps getting, every year, it just keeps getting better and better and better. My liver enzymes, all of them are finally in normal ranges. And
Oh, wonderful.
I attribute that hugely to working with your system. So I adore it. And I've also, anytime a friend comes over, I give them a treatment and they love it. I've had some amazing experiences. I share that in one of the previous episodes where I had a friend who got in it. She was feeling very sick. She had a cold. And afterwards, she was up and running and jumping around, but also the water smelled heavily of something like Febreze and chlorine. And she looked at me, and it was shocking how much that water smelled heavily of these substances. And she said, 15 years ago, I was a maid and I never wore gloves. And these are the chemicals that I used. And they were stuck in her body and they got pulled out. I was in a pool in February before the shutdown happened. I was swimming in a chlorinated pool. And then it was a few months later, I don't know why, maybe I don't remember why, if I took a break from doing the PS, but I remember like 2 months later, I jumped in the PS and the water smelled hugely of chlorine, like of pool water, chlorine. And I thought that's really interesting. And every time I do go in a chlorinated pool, which isn't often, my PS water, even if it's weeks or a month later, the stuff that comes out of me, it actually pulls the chlorine because I live on a well, so I never have exposure to chlorine, and it pulls the toxins, the chemicals from the pool out of my body, and you can smell it in the water. So, and I also feel like $1,000,000. I feel lighter. I feel my I have energy. I have mental clarity. I feel amazing. So, anyways,
Your body's brilliant. Your body's brilliant at detoxing, you know. It knows
thank you.
how. It knows how. You just have to get the exit routes open. But
Right.
I mean, we see that when we eat things like asparagus. The next time you go to pee, you smell asparagus.
Because the body is eliminating the sulfur.
Right, but also, asparagus is great for the kidneys because it helps to detoxify the kidneys.
Sulfur containing foods. I mean, for some people, it's not healthy, but for most, it's quite required by the nervous system. But also, it's required in repairing cartilage. Cartilage requires sulfur.
Yes.
I thought that was really interesting.
Well, you
So,
think of the sulfur drugs, in terms of
mm,
antibiotic, but that's where garlic was a classic, antifungal, antiviral, anti everything.
Eat
Get
your
all the bad
garlic.
guys out. Yeah, get the bad guys out. But I always used to joke, it keeps the bad guys away, but it keeps the people who have the bad guys away too.
Yeah, because you're smelling wonderfully of garlic. That's true.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But you look at those cultures that have longevity built into them.
Mm-hmm.
They're eating those kind of foods.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have a clean aquarium and you feed the fish the right food, is it really a surprise that they're thriving?
And I love that you do continue to bring up the analogy of having a clean aquarium, because a clean aquarium invites the good bacteria in. And for anyone who's successfully had fish, I used to breed African Malawi cichlids, and that requires making sure you have a very healthy tank. I used to actually have um, over 10 running fish tanks in my house.
Wow.
It was how I got out of my depression after my mom died. It
Aw,
was my boyfriend at the time just noticed that the only thing that brought a smile to my face was watching live fish. And so he
wow.
encouraged me, and I learned all about how to foster healthy fish tanks. And the first month or so with a fish tank is really like messy because you don't have an established microbiome. So imagine
Right?
it's kind of like taking antibiotics, and all of a sudden now all your good bacteria is dead, and
Yeah.
now, whatever you eat, you're going to create crazy bad cultures in your gut, or you're going to create good cultures. Same with the fish tank. And so there's many similarities between managing a fish tank towards better balance and better health, because that always invites the good bacteria, which sustains the entire environment, and thus also relating back to our own body, that the cleaner our body is, the better the environment is for everything else to live in harmony.
Yeah, the mucky aquarium is the analogy is that of course, as you pointed out, is the human body and the fish are the cells. But in the mucky aquarium, the one that's green and slimy and yucky, that is an environment that's high acidity, low oxygen. But the clean aquarium is high oxygen, low acidity, slight alkalinity, and high minerals. And that's why the fish thrive.
Hmm. It's been such a pleasure having you here today. You've shared so much. Is there anything you'd like to say to wrap up today's interview?
Yeah, a couple things. How to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. So here again, just retrain the brain. So the number one thing in that moment of stress, whatever it is that's triggering you to have a derailment, catch yourself on a breathing level and do that diaphragm breathing. So on inhale, the diaphragm goes up. On exhale, sorry, inhale, the diaphragm goes down. On exhale, the diaphragm comes up. And then if you can train yourself to be a nose breather, it's just better because you create a higher level of nitric oxide, which helps to vasodilate your whole circulatory system.
Mm.
But the other thing is because of this time and the weirdness. I mean, we've never ever experienced anything like this on the planet. We're at such a pivotal point in history that I just so want to help you all in terms of being able to find balance. So here's on the emotional level. Bach flowers. Bach himself was a bacteriologist in England, and he was a Harley Street doctor, so really, highly regarded. But anyways, he would get into emotional states, and he'd go out in nature, and he'd be drawn to what made him feel good again. What was the balancing factor in nature? And so he created, I think it's 32 or so remedies. But in terms of Bach flower, when COVID first happened, my first response to COVID was to go to the health food store and get 2 bottles of Mimulus. So that's spelled Mimulus, Mimulus. How I remember that is when you're on the computer and you hit the minus screen. So this is to minus fear. Mimulus is to minus fear. Willow, the trouble with what we're experiencing is it's so easy to go into victim mode. around all of these regulations and restrictions. And so to stay out of victim mode, because you want to stay in the driver's seat, not be in the back seat of the trunk, you want that feeling that you're the one who's making the choices. So Willow is great for that. Cerito is spelled Cerato, Cerito. That's the one that increases your intuition, and that will cause you to stay in the forebrain. And then because of all of these things that are occurring and all of the changes, walnut is really great for any kind of change, and especially when there's a resistance to change. The
Is it
other
just
thing that,
eating walnuts, or is this a
no,
supplement?
this is the Bach flower
Oh, Bach
walnut,
flower
sorry.
walnut. Got
Yeah,
it. So it's walnut
these are all,
flour.
yeah, these are all, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So these are all of the remedies from Bach. And Bach is spelled like the musician, Bach. So Bach flower remedies. The other thing that's really important is to feed your nervous system. So in the cell salt line, Highlands is the brand that's in the U.S. Number 6, there's 12 in the line. Number 6 is Kali Phos, and Kali is spelt with a K. So Kali, and then a space, and then Phos, Phos. Now, what's really interesting about that, Ashley, is that it's potassium. Kali is potassium. So a lot of us get a lot of, the sodium, but we don't get the balance of the potassium. So this is potassium phosphate, and it physically feeds the nervous system and calms it down. Now, when I went on the doctor's call with that company, they were doing a webinar, and they had a person on there whose client was a naturopath, and he was telling the story, and he said mainly the naturopath had women as his patients, but he gave all of his patients that one cell salt, number 6 Kali Phos, and 80% of their symptoms disappeared on that one cell salt.
Hmm.
That's because we're nervous system beings, and this literally feeds the nerves.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the other level, B1, thiamine, anybody who has MS is completely deficient in thiamine, because thiamine is involved in creating the myelin sheath. But thiamine is, everybody do research on thiamine. You would be amazed at how significant thiamine is. But it's number one for feeding the mitochondria. Well, when you think the mitochondria are your power cells in every cell of the body, they're what create the ATP or energy, the glucose kind of thing, for the body to power up, to do its signaling, to do its communications, to do, its function, to do its enzymes, to do absolutely everything. So that's why, with Ashley, the focus is always feed the body. So I always jokingly say, when you go up in the mountains, it says, don't feed the bears. So I say, don't feed the bugs. So instead, when you're stressed, do not, underline 4 times, reach for what is classically called comfort foods, because the last thing they will do is create comfort in your body. But instead, have a cupboard, and this is what I do. I have a cupboard that I open, and then I create green drinks. So I got about 4 different green powders, and I got turmeric in there, and barley grass, and then I take a bunch of chlorella, and I just and then protein, sources, and all these things. So anyways, in the moment of stress, take what would be normally an addiction to junk food and change that, train the brain to change it to change the crave to power nutrients, and feed that to your cells and watch what happens. And then the other thing was just a reminder about, tapping your brain, in the front, either tap or press on it, focus on the eyes, and look at colors and textures, and that will bring you to your forebrain. Now, the things that will help the vagus nerve, to stimulate the vagus nerve, is the interesting thing, Ashley, is the combination of essential oils, clove and lime. And what you do is you put it on the mastoid bone. You know, the back of the ear has that rounded part. Yeah, you put it right on there with some oil. Never put your essential oils on straight. You always want to put a carrier oil in there. And so put that right on the mastoid bone, and it stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system. But here are the other things that also do the deep breathing, which we mentioned, diaphragmatic breathing, yoga, and interestingly enough, gagging. So that's quite interesting. Gagging actually stimulates it. But when you think of where it is, right up in that jawline, a little bit north, I mean, it's right in that whole area. So gargling, so your whole tooth pulling, you know, oil pulling process will stimulate it. Freezing cold water will do it too. So, I mean, what have we all been told is to have a shower and end it with cold water? But I can tell you that probably 90% of this population is not doing that. I've just started to stimulate it myself at the end of a bath. I will pour cold water over my head, and then part of it will go down my body. It is a shock to the system, but again, you're stimulating that zone of the body. And then things like singing, humming, and chanting, laughter and smiling. And so, you know, the key to all that we've said today is really your body is so absolutely brilliant at healing, but it needs your help to do so by the choices you make daily. And as a matter of fact, in the moment. And so the first step in any healing journey is to create a clean healing environment. Amen.
Amen.
So
Oh,
it's awesome to be with you. I always love being with you. We could talk for days, but you know, gratitude is so important. Just tell the people you love that you love them. Leave them cards. Let the world around you know that you love them. Acknowledge their good behavior, you know, just sort of minimize their bad behavior, but acknowledge their good behavior. Yeah, there's a movie years ago, and I wished I remembered. I saw it when I was like a teenager, and it was about this woman who got married, and her mother, as a wedding gift, gave her this book, and it was a dog training book, and it was to train the husband, including rubbing behind his ears. So how fun is that? So anyways, but you know, I often think about that movie, and it's a question of training ourselves to the good behaviors, but to acknowledge the people around you. And you know, what the world needs now is love, sweet love. And so the more that you can focus on being a sunshine presence of love, not only does that hugely bless your own physiology, your emotional being, your mental being, but you radiate that out into the environment. You know, you see all these people out in the stores, and of course now the stores, that's a whole nother topic on toxicity of, you know, what's on the floors and making you do hand sanitizers. But anyways, so the thing is that when those people sergeant major you, use the hand sanitizer, I just smile at them and I say, I'm sorry, I can't do that because I'm very chemically sensitive. But I just smile at them. I mean, you know, it'd be real easy just to give them back their own energy level. But, you know, you got to switch it. You just got to change it around so that you're giving out beautiful energy. Because if there's ever a time on the planet that everybody needs love, and Jerry Jampolsky said that in his book, love is letting go of fear. And if people aren't coming from love, it's because they're needing love.
hmm and their vagus nerve is
On
toxic.
yeah,
It's
their vagus nerve is on toxic and it's in dormant mode. Yeah,
right. They're
exactly.
stuck. They're stuck in stress gear. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
And so when you smile at people, like all those people, you know, that are so frightened because you're within, you know, 12 feet of them, you just smile at them and send them this loving energy and watch what happens to their face. They just completely light up too because
hmm
they don't want to be in a state of fear. None of us do.
And
But we've
even
got
if
to,
you're wearing a mask, I've noticed, and I thought this was really interesting, that you can tell someone's smiling by looking at their eyes. Like you can even see the shift in their face. And
yes,
so,
the
yeah,
energy,
just
their
because they
energy
can't,
level.
yeah, just because they can't see you smile, you can actually hear someone smile. That's why I learned long, long time ago. I was a sales manager for an international training company that did personal growth and development work. And I learned that people can hear you smile. And I actually, listeners have given me feedback. They're like, I know you're smiling. And it's like, just because someone can't see you smile, maybe someone's blind, they can feel it. They can feel the intention, the energy, they can hear it.
It's a
Uh,
frequency thing.
right. And people can, if they're not looking at your mouth, they can see it in your physiology. When we're actually authentically smiling, our whole physiology has micro muscle movements that change. There's a really great woman on YouTube. I'm sort of forgetting her name right now, but she does it's really great. She takes all these different political speeches, and she gives you the insights as to their physiology, whether they're lying, whether they're apprehensive, whether there's something else going on. It's
Lie
really,
detector.
yeah, she's
Right.
she's a lie detector, but she's actually a body language reader.
Reader.
And
Yeah.
so there was one person that was doing a fake smile, and she paused and she says, "See, they're moving their mouth, but nothing else is moving.
The
They're
eyes,
not
it's not coming
actually
through the eyes.
smiling." And she says, "You will know someone's smiling when their eyes move, when their ears move, when they're actually engaging all these muscles in their head."
Unless they've had Botox.
Well, that's another thing. But when someone's authentically smiling, that they're smiling with their energy, they're smiling with their voice, they're smiling with
Yes.
everything. So,
They're smiling with their soul.
right, right. So use the energy of a smile as your shield, as you're exuding love and acceptance, and I think a lot of people need that right now.
Yeah, we all stood in line to be here at this time, which is very, very interesting in terms of the pivotalness of this historical moment. And I mean the whole thing is that, you came here to be an evolving, well, the only way that I can say it is an evolving sun presence, because the more you can be sunny on the inside, you radiate that out. And I mean, the challenges of moment to moment life is going to absolutely challenge that. I had a couple derailments happen yesterday, and I just caught myself laughing and just saying, okay, is this a moment of resistance or resilience? And so we
Yeah.
have to train the brain to resilience.
Because when there's resistance, things break. Nature, when you see something that's resisting in nature, it breaks. Like right now, we have lots of windstorms in my area, and the branches that are not flexible break.
Yeah, the difference between an oak and a willow.
Right. So um, we need to have more resilience to bounce back, to be flexible, to flex. I
It's
interviewed a woman recently on reversing osteopenia and osteoporosis and preventing bone degeneration. And she said it's not about how much bone density we have. This is the misnomer. You can have bone density, but your bones can be fragile because they don't have flexibility. She says the Japanese have one of the lowest rates in the world of hip fractures, and these people live a long time, and they're quite active, but it's because their diet has given them flexible bones, and that's
and
what
they're
you want.
physically active,
They are. Their
very
bones are
physically.
strong, but they're not so minerally dense that they're fragile, that they have resistance, that they break under pressure. They flex under pressure, and then they
That's
bounce
why a
back.
rebound are so great.
Yes.
Yeah, because you're actually creating three different forces on your bones all at the same time, but it creates that flexibility. And the flexibility of the muscles and the bones is the same with the emotions and the thoughts. So in the moment of stress, you'll notice that you want to have a total no response, that you'll totally go in resistance. But in that moment, if you can absolutely accept whatever is happening, then you can shift gears and move through it. But if you get stuck in resistance, you're not going anywhere. And it's just going to antagonize your thoughts, your emotions, and your physiology.
Uh, a lesson I learned from Tony Robbins, and I really, really love it. He says when something that you is happening that you're resisting, right? That you disagree with, that you don't like, that something is happening in your life, and you don't have that you control because it's something that's happening regardless, right? You ask yourself what's good about this. Not in a joking manner, in a really seriously, what is good about this? And he gave the example of a client who is a lawyer, and his partner was retiring or selling or something was happening, and he was losing. I think he was also going through a divorce, but there's so much wrong in his life. He's losing his company. He was trying to make partnership. He was losing his marriage, and he couldn't see any positive way out of it. And Tony kept saying the same thing over and over again. What is good about this? Like, what's good about this situation? Like, honestly, genuinely, what is good about this?
What's the
And
silver lining,
right,
right?
but like, what good could come of this? What good could you make come of this? So what is good here? And at first he couldn't think of anything, which is often the response. And then he started to see things. He goes, "Well, my son is graduating, and I've always wanted to work with him." I think he was also graduating as a lawyer, and there was no room in that other company for him and his son to work together. And so he, by the end of the session, had realized that now he has the opportunity to start a new company with his son. And then he's like, well, now I'm not attached to this building I've been driving to, and I hate the location. It was somewhere in LA. I've always wanted to live on the beach and work on the beach. And now that he's like, all these things have changed in his life, now he gets to actually do what he's wanted to do, but couldn't because of other restrictions. And
Mm.
so by the end of the session, he had decided he was going to move to Venice Beach, work and live there. So there's almost no commute, and spend a lot of his time with his son and build this new business. And all of this was just so exciting to him. But at the beginning of the session, he couldn't even see past all the bad. And yes, there are bad things. Bad things will always happen. And if we resist and push and resist and push, we're constantly triggering the stress response. And if we look for what's good about this, in this bad situation, what good can I make of this? Like, genuinely, we may find all these wonderful opportunities for healing, for growth that we never saw before because we could not let ourselves see that because we were too focused on pushing back and resisting what we didn't want to change.
It's a classic of the hindbrain forebrain response.
Right.
So when you come to the forebrain, then you can see the options. But if you're stuck in the back brain in animalistic fight or flight, you just feel trapped.
Yeah. So do that deep breathing. Do everything that Kellyanne said to do today. Go to her website, platinumenergysystems.ca. Give her a call. Check out the Platinum Energy System. I love it. Get those Bach flower remedies and the essential oils that she talked about. And the deep breathing is so important. And then catch yourself and turn your thinking into healing thoughts that don't trigger the panic response in the body.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Love your body to health.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been such a pleasure to have you back on.
Well, wonderful to be here and to visit with you. All right, God bless everybody, because this is quite a time that we're in, but the awesome thing is that you have full capability of turning this around in all of your lives, in all the ways, to being, as Ashley just said, where's the good in this?